Welcome to Speakeasy Spirits. When I started this channel, I made a list of the cocktails I wanted to start with, some of my favorites. But there's one cocktail on that list I haven't been able to crack. I've tried several variations, different ways to make it my own, some way to improve upon the recipe, and every time I just keep coming back to the original is so good, I haven't found a variation I like. So today, we're just going to play it by ear. I've got a bunch of ingredients out. We're going to experiment and try to make a better White Russian. The White Russian is a really simple recipe. There's really two main variants, either using equal parts vodka, coffee liqueur, and cream or milk, or using 2 parts vodka to 1 part cream or milk and 1 part coffee liqueur. There are variations, like the White Belgian, that uses a chocolate liqueur, but none of the variations I've seen stray very far from that basic formula. But today we're going to try and change that. So I ran out to the liquor store. I've replaced my fruit bowl with a bowl full of random mini bottles of things I thought might make a good White Russian variation. We're just going to start opening some of these and play with it. But first, let's have that original to compare it to. I prefer the equal parts recipe, so let's start with 1 ounce of vodka, 1 ounce of Kahlua or your favorite coffee liqueur, to that we're going to add some ice, and let's give it a stir to combine. We also want to stir it enough to chill it and dilute it a little bit. Once the tin begins to frost over and get cold in your hand, you're probably done. Now let's take a rocks glass and 1 large cube of ice. We're going to strain this over the ice. And we'll top that with 1 ounce of heavy cream. And we'll just pour that slowly over the ice so it floats on top of the liquor. And that's a classic White Russian. Now you can stir it to combine, or you can drink it in its layers. That gives it a bit of a progression as you drink through it, where you start out with the creaminess and get to the more bitter chocolate notes at the end. That's a really good cocktail. All of the cream really balance out the bitter notes of the coffee, and the whole thing combines into a kind of chocolate milk. The vodka doesn't bring a whole lot to the flavor. There's a little bite of ethanol in it, but overall, this is just a creamy coffee drink. And I personally don't drink coffee. I don't like coffee. I don't want coffee, but I love this cocktail. So let's bring out the bowl of random liquor. So my first idea is to go with a southern variation on the White Russian. So we have a bottle of moonshine that I got from the Mob Museum in Las Vegas. And we have some banana pudding moonshine and some banana pudding sipping cream. Banana pudding being a very popular dessert in the South. Since we're doing all equal parts, let's go with 1 ounce of the moonshine. We'll use the sipping cream. Again, 1 ounce. We'll keep this in equal parts. That already looks plenty creamy. So let's do a 1/4 ounce of the heavy cream. And we're going to give that a shake. Let's use a rocks glass, and we'll strain that off. And to make up for the rest of the cream, what is banana pudding without some whipped cream? I really wish I had a Nilla wafer to garnish this with. And that is our Southern Banana Pudding White Russian. Need a straw for this one. Since we used less cream, It's definitely more alcohol burn to it. You do get the banana flavor. This banana pudding sipping cream is already very sweet. It's already pretty creamy. It's definitely a higher proof drink with the moonshine in it. It's not bad, but it still doesn't beat the original. So back into the random bowl of liquor. I'm thinking this next one, let's try the Jägermeister cold brew coffee. Now for the rest of this, we'll stick to the traditional White Russian equal parts formula. So let's start with 1 ounce of our Jägermeister cold brew. Definitely smells like strong coffee, but it's also got an underlying herbal note that you'd expect from Jägermeister. I'm not sure how this is going to work out. We'll do 1 ounce of vodka. Let's add some ice. And we'll stir that. Again, we're stirring just until the glass gets cold and begins to frost over. Let's strain that into a rocks glass. And we'll add 1 ounce of heavy cream. There you have the Jägermeister White Russian. That is different. I like herbal liqueurs. I really love chartreuse and anything like it. This is a little weird. It does have strong coffee notes. It's a much darker, more bitter coffee than the Kahlua is. There is that underlying herbal note, even a little black licorice, which is a little odd, but somehow not terrible. But I can definitely say this does not beat the original. All right, I've got another idea. Kahlua bills itself as a rum and coffee liqueur, so let's get rid of the vodka in place of some rum. And let's get rid of the Kahlua for a homemade coffee syrup and some St. Elizabeth allspice dram. We're going to try and take a White Russian into Tiki territory. So let's start with 1.5 ounces of the white rum. This will not be an equal parts cocktail because we need to make up for the rum that was in the Kahlua. So we're going a little heavier on the rum. We'll use 1/2 ounce of my coffee syrup. So I made this with some cold brew concentrate. I basically made 2 extra strong cups of coffee and then added 2 cups of sugar to it. Now we don't want to overspice this and repeat the mistakes of the Jägermeister White Russian, so we're going to use 1 bar spoon of the allspice dram. This is basically a nutmeg liqueur. It should go well with the coffee. Now let's add some ice. We'll shake this one. Strain it. And we'll top with 1 ounce of the heavy cream. And there's an attempt at turning a White Russian into a Tiki drink. Okay, that one is really good. There's not enough allspice dram there to overpower it, but it's a background note that really plays well with the coffee. The coffee syrup is a little sweeter than the Kahlua, but that balances out with the extra rum. I don't know that it hits the mark as a tiki cocktail, but it's a damn good White Russian. It just keeps getting better. Let's give that a stir. It's definitely a dessert cocktail. It's creamy, it's sweet, but it is delicious. I think we got that one right, but I got one more idea. Let's go full circle back to the original recipe, but this time with homemade ingredients. In place of the Kahlua, let's start with 3/4 of an ounce of coffee syrup. Now to turn that into a homemade Kahlua, let's add 1/2 ounce of rum. Let's add 1 ounce of vodka. This is a potato vodka. It's a really high quality one. We're going to try making this with the best ingredients possible. Let's add some ice and give that a stir. Now, since we're making a more elegant and refined White Russian, let's use a martini glass and strain that in. So if we stopped right there, you'd have something between an espresso martini and a coffee daiquiri. Let's add the cream. We'll go with 3/4 of an ounce of the cream. And let's pour that over the back of a bar spoon so it'll have a float. And we'll garnish with some grated nutmeg. And there you have our refined White Russian. It's definitely a White Russian. You can tell its similarities to the first one, but everything is elevated a bit. The coffee syrup has a more coffee taste. Since this is homemade, you're able to use whatever coffee you like and tailor this right to your own tastes. On the nose, you get the nutmeg because you don't get much scent through the cream. I think using a really good white rum in this adds a little bit of a fruity note that pairs well with some fruitier coffees. The elevated White Russian is definitely the best cocktail of the night, but the Tiki version definitely takes it in a new direction. I would probably skip the Jägermeister and the banana pudding. And of course, there's nothing wrong with the original. I still don't think we've quite nailed this. As good as the Tiki version is, I'm thinking maybe we can use coconut milk or a macadamia milk instead of cream. I've also got some ideas. How about a horchata White Russian? Maybe we leave the coffee out and switch to tea with a matcha Green Russian. I hope you enjoyed this little experiment. This is basically the process that I go through when I'm trying to develop a new cocktail. One last tip, these little bottles are really great when you're experimenting. You can get these from 99 cents to $2 or $3. And when you're making an equal parts cocktail like these, you can easily make this as small as you want, 1/4 ounce, maybe a tablespoon of each ingredient, so you can play around without making a full version of a cocktail that you might not like. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.